On the stage tonight, you will see a live simulation of a National Security Council's Principals Committee meeting at the White House. Our scenario takes place 2 years from today, on November 19th, 2021. We have simulated a world in which one big thing has changed. In March 2020, the People's Bank of China launched a sovereign digital currency known as the digital yuan.
We're hearing reports that North Korea may be using China's digital yuan currency to evade sanctions and purchase weapons material.
Well, the digital yuan is an opportunity for the North Koreans to break free of the American hold on dollar transactions.
We're in a tight spot. Our major means to contain and deter the North Koreans has been financial sanctions. And now that's imperiled by the fact that North Korea is accessing the digital yuan.
I wish I had better news. Fundamentally, our ability to sanction North Korea in a devastating way depends upon Chinese cooperation.
We're more reliant than we have ever been on not our coercive power through SWIFT, but our persuasive power with the Chinese. And the Secretary of Treasury has already made that clear. He prefaced his remarks by saying he has bad news. I guess I have worse news, which is that we have 30 years of history of not persuading the Chinese to use their leverage.
One of the questions that the president has is, can we definitively say that the Chinese have the ability to see these yuan transactions that the North Koreans are using?
I do think that the digital yuan is totally transparent to the Chinese government. People's Bank of China initiated this several years ago, basically to compete in their domestic payment space with two big tech companies, Alibaba with Alipay, and Tencent with WeChat Pay.
What we talked about so far, I think, is the Chinese government, and there's another actor involved here, which are the Chinese commercial banks. That, as I understand it, the way the digital currency is structured, Chinese commercial banks are in the middle of it, and they have an interest in doing business in the United States. And so at some point we need to think about what kind of pressure and other tools can we use to focus on those banks and their interests in the United States.
Breaking news out of Brussels this evening. A cyber attack on SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, has resulted in the theft of $3 billion from commercial banks based in Germany, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE.
So the old system just isn't cutting it anymore. And unfortunately, the trajectory of that is that it's just going to keep on getting worse and worse and worse. And so, yes, we see China with the yuan, but you know, the competitiveness of the US dollar is a matter of national security, and we have to take this seriously and continue to innovate.
Secretary Summers, are you suggesting that the U.S. create our own digital currency, or just that we work on SWIFT, we stick to our current system, but make SWIFT less vulnerable to cyber threats?
We need to make a secure SWIFT. Look, SWIFT is digital. It's all binary. It's all electronic communication. So there's a question about what the definition, what we mean by that. But my proposal is that we harden SWIFT, that we commit with respect to avoiding what other countries see as abuse of SWIFT, and that we make clear that where there are SWIFT transactions involving North Korea or involving other rogue nations, we will use the leverage associated with SWIFT.
We tend to think of the only things that are provocative to the Chinese as our naval forces or military exercises. But if we build the kind of system we're talking about and have even a stronger dollar-denominated global currency system, whether it's electronic or digital, it'll be even more provocative, and we will be in a longer death struggle with the Chinese. I would argue that we revisit the G2 concept that we had talked about in the early days of the Obama administration.
Us off, the European Union Ambassador, you've done a great job with the cocktail parties in Beijing. I'd like to hear from Secretary Carter.
We can't let stand the Chinese using this currency issue as a way of making inroads into what has traditionally been a strength of ours.
While we may try to shore up our financial dominance. We may also well be moving into a world where we are not financially dominant. I'm surprised not to hear the Secretary of Defense saying he needs more support for his military, that military action is going to be one of the tools that we are going to reach for more consistently.
I'll take that too, Madam Vice President. That scarcely does anything about a Chinese currency
Well,
move
I think we have to
with
start
respect.
thinking big. We can't be bogged down. We
Well,
have to
that's
think
thinking
about our
sideways.
intelligence operations as well.
We have been leapfrogged by others, by digital currency, by digital Chinese currency. Why? Because, frankly, our central bank has been slow. And there's an appointment coming in January of 22. The president's got to decide whether to change over who's leading the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve runs our payment system. And I think we need to move that Federal Reserve into the modern era.
What about in 5 minutes if we hear that the world is trading oil in this digital yuan? What does that do to our economy? I think we really have to ask some of these questions so we don't have to wait 3 or 4 days for you to call a meeting every time something important happens. Thank you.
Here is the way that I'm going to summarize what I will read out to the president. Per the Secretary of State's recommendation that there will be a POTUS call to President Xi. We're going to talk about new avenues for cooperation. We need a strategy to, one, modernize our SWIFT system. I think the word was harden from cyber attack, from the North Koreans in particular. But we need to develop and present options to the president for a U.S. equivalent of a digital currency, either a private-public partnership or, if the Treasury is able to do it with the Fed, something that would be a public-only option. We need a strategy to resuscitate U.S. financial prowess, I think is the way you put it, Madam Vice President, and examine this idea of secondary sanctions and whether in the overuse of them we've actually undermined our ability to use them down the road. Does that all sound fine to you? Thank you very much. Okay, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good.